Everyone to a meeting of the Brant County Council, April the 8th, 2025. Before we begin, I'm going to explain why I'm wearing this jersey. I had a bet with the mayor of Blandford Blenheim, Mark Peterson, and we had a hockey game with Paris versus Plattsville. And we tied, actually. There was a shootout, though, and I understand, I didn't know until tonight that apparently we lost the shootout. So I'm wearing his jersey, and he's wearing my jersey at council. So I liked it better when it was a tie. I was glad. I didn't really need to know who won the first. But anyway, that's why I'm wearing it. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Howes is online and Councillor Pierce is away. The other thing we have to talk about before we begin is the clerk sent out a notice that the votes tonight were going to be recorded. Do we need to do that? Is everybody good with not doing that? Because it's such a short meeting. We'll just not do a recorded vote, or do you want to do a recorded votes? Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would request that we do the recorded voting.
You request we do recorded voting. Seeking a seconder for Councillor Oakley. Councillor Bell, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, and it carries. Okay, second thing on our agenda is our land acknowledgement, and Councillor Miller, I believe you have that.
You believe correctly, Mr. Mayor. As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Six Nations of the Grand River, and the traditional territory of the Attawandaron. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. We recognize the significance of their contributions to the past, present, and future of this land. As a county, we have a shared responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work, and a commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. We commit to continue learning, reflecting on our past, and working in allyship.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Number 3 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move by myself, second by Councillor Bell, that the County of Brant Council agenda for April 8th, 2025 be approved.
Mr. Clerk.
I will ask all members of council who vote in favor of this motion to please stand. And for Councillor Howes, I'll ask for you to raise your hand if you're in favor. All those in favor, please rise. And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest is number 4 on the agenda. Seeing none, if you find you have a conflict, let me know, please. Delegations, we have none. Adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting, Brant County Council meeting, March the 11th, 2025. Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Oakley that the minutes of the County of Brant Council meeting of March 11th, 2025 be approved.
Mr. Clerk.
I will ask all those in favor of this motion to please stand. And Councillor Howes, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. You may stand. That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. Are there any? Takes us to number 8 on the agenda, which is the public hearing under the Planning Act. So what's going to happen is this is going to be a public meeting, and I'll call the public meeting open now. And it is ZBA 2-25NM, 4 units as of right. And staff is going to present, and it's Nagin. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nagin Musavi Branjaki. I'm a planning student with the county. Today, I'm going to present preliminary zoning changes to permit 4 residential units as of right in fully serviced areas of Paris and St. George. To start with the as of right permission, it basically means that a property can be developed in accordance with the associated zone without requiring a public hearing process or council's approval. 4 units as of right can be achieved on a lot in several ways. It may include a fourplex where the units are equally divided, or include a primary dwelling that is larger than the subsequent 3 ARUs. Other configurations as shown in this slide, such as detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, stacked townhouse, row house, and street fronting row house dwellings can also achieve 4 units. If the 4 units are achieved as a result of the construction of a new primary dwelling, additions to an existing primary dwelling, or interior or basement conversions, they must meet the standard regulations of the associated zone. 4 units can also be achieved through detached ARUs, either by converting an existing accessory structure or constructing a new detached dwelling. Regardless of the configuration, a building permit would be required for any new proposed residential dwelling. The county's current zoning regulations permit up to 3 residential units per lot as of right in fully serviced areas, including 1 primary unit and 2 ARUs. Despite permissions for 3-unit properties, all ARUs developed to date have only accommodated 2 units, with the majority being developed as attached or basement units. The table on this slide shows the maximum estimated potential uptake of 4 units as of right in Paris and St. George, excluding the existing ARUs. A small percentage of lots would be eligible for 3rd and 4th units, mostly larger lots in older developed areas, and these developments are likely to happen over time. Certain lot characteristics such as lot coverage, parking, driveway, pedestrian access, setbacks, servicing, and the existing building type can further limit the uptake of the 4 units initiative. As mentioned, currently zoning regulations allow up to 3 units per lot with 1 primary dwelling and up to 2 ARUs. To permit 4 units on a lot, a regulation is proposed to be added regarding building configuration and the number of permitted ARUs in fully serviced areas. These configurations would allow up to 3 attached ARUs, or up to 2 attached ARUs and 1 detached ARU, or up to 1 attached ARU and 2 detached ARUs. These configurations would support different types of ARUs, including additions to the existing dwelling, above garage additions, accessory structure conversions, interior or basement conversions, and new detached dwellings. The county's urban residential zones, including R1, R2, and RM1, allow for low-density residential developments. The least permissible zone, which is residential singles or R1 zone, permits single detached dwellings, group homes, and existing duplex dwellings, whereas RM1, the most permissible one, accommodates single detached, semi-detached, row house, street fronting row house, stacked townhouse, duplex, and triplex dwellings, as well as group homes and lodging houses. These zones have the greatest potential to accommodate gentle infill through minor revisions to use definitions and other relevant zoning regulations. Currently, fourplexes are only permitted in residential multiple medium density, RM2, and residential multiple high density, RM3 zones. A change is proposed to allow fourplexes in all urban residential zones. Also, current zoning regulations allow duplexes only as existing uses in residential singles and residential singles and semis zones. An amendment is proposed to remove this condition, allowing both new duplexes and existing buildings to be converted into duplexes. The definition for converted dwelling is also proposed to be removed. Converted dwellings are not a permitted use within urban residential zones and have only been applied in 2 site-specific zones. Removing this definition would provide greater flexibility for ARU types and avoid unnecessary classification. To minimize unnecessary changes to multiple definitions, a footnote is proposed to be added to urban residential zone permitted use table to clarify which type of dwellings would allow up to 4 units. These dwelling types are singles, semis, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, stacked townhouse, row houses, and street fronting row houses. As for the lot coverage, there are 2 regulations that apply to the maximum lot coverage for detached ARUs within urban residential zones. The first one regulates accessory uses allowing the lesser of 15% of the total lot area or 95 square meters. The second regulation is regarding the lot coverage for R1, R2, RM1, and RM2 zones, specifying that a maximum lot coverage of 40% applies to the primary dwelling unit with a maximum overall lot coverage of 45%. The additional 5% is only allocated for accessory buildings or structures. To provide more straightforward direction and prevent potential misinterpretation of this regulation, an amendment is proposed to remove the maximum overall lot coverage of 45%. This change will simplify the regulation by allowing a coverage up to 40% for the primary dwelling unit, while detached ARUs can have a maximum lot coverage of 15% of the total lot area or 95 square meters, whichever is lesser. Please note that all permitted uses within urban residential zones, including fourplexes, will be subject to the current lot coverage, which is 40%, and no changes are being proposed. Enabling up to 2 detached ARUs as part of the 4 units initiative would allow for the addition of a second-story unit within a detached ARU. Currently, the maximum permitted building height for a detached ARU is 4.5 meters on lots within urban residential zones. Recognizing that the existing maximum permitted building height would restrict the inclusion of a second story, an amendment is proposed to increase the limit from 4.5 meters to 6 meters, applicable only to urban residential zones. The proposed height is based on the 2-story accessory dwelling unit example as outlined in the CMHC's housing design catalog. Also, it is proposed to prohibit any rooftop amenity space above the 2nd story of a detached ARU unless it meets the maximum accessory structure height. The maximum permitted building height in urban residential zones, which are 10.5 and 12 meters, depending on the dwelling type, will remain unchanged. A minimum of 1.2 meters for interior side yard and rear yard setbacks is currently required for detached ARUs within urban residential zones. Staff recommend the addition of a condition that requires a minimum 3-meter setback for where a second-story window, balcony, or exterior stairs face a lot line. This would ensure increased separation of detached ARUs from adjacent parcels and provide adequate buffer from the neighboring properties. All other setback requirements for uses within urban residential zones will remain unchanged. Both counties' OP and zoning bylaw require 1 additional parking space per ARU, in addition to the required parking spaces for the principal dwelling. County zoning bylaw also requires 2 off-street parking spaces per unit for dwellings with frontage on a public street and requires 2 off-street parking spaces as well as 0.35 visitor parking spaces per unit for row houses, stacked townhouses, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. These requirements, along with a minimum driveway width of 5.6 meters, a minimum lot frontage of 11 meters, unobstructed access from the municipal right-of-way, and a minimum of 30% landscape open space would limit the number of parcels eligible for 3rd and 4th units. However, staff are not proposing any changes to parking requirements at this time. Under the county's official plan, an ARU may qualify for severance from the primary dwelling subject to compliance with consent policies and meeting the zoning requirements. If qualified, both the retained and severed lots can accommodate 4 units each. It is the staff's understanding that very few lots within Paris and St. George would be eligible for such lot severances, as many parcels do not meet the zoning standards. Also, since the preferred method for servicing for ARUs is through infrastructure provided by the principal dwelling, severances that could result in additional servicing requirements may not be supported. Here are a list of proposed amendments. For the permitted uses, it is proposed to add fourplexes as a permitted use for all urban residential zones and to remove the existing only condition for duplexes within R1 and R2 zones. For definitions, it is proposed to remove the definition for a converted dwelling to avoid unnecessary classification of ARUs and to add a list of uses that would allow for ARUs in the ARU definition. For building configuration, it is proposed to add a regulation that consists building configuration and a number of permitted ARUs in fully serviced areas. And for lot coverage, it is proposed to remove the additional footnote on lot coverage for R1, R2, RM1, and RM2 zones. Sorry. As for the maximum building height for accessory structures, an amendment is proposed to increase the maximum structure height for detached ARUs from 4.5 meters to 6 meters, and the minimum interior side yard and rear yard setback is proposed to have additional condition to require a minimum of 3-meter setback where a second-story window, balcony, or exterior stairs of a detached ARU faces a lot line. And it is proposed to prohibit any rooftop amenity space above the second story of a detached ARU unless it meets the maximum height. The proposed changes were for information purposes only. Staff will further review zoning regulations and preliminary amendments based on the direction received from council and the public, and will present a draft zoning bylaw amendment for consideration at an upcoming council meeting in May. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Because this is a public meeting, it's open to the public for any comments. If there's anybody in the room that wants to speak to this application, or we're doing it after the public gets to do it 3 times, then we're going to do it. Because I'm going to need a motion for it to get it on the floor after we've heard from the people in the room. Yes, sir. Come on up. Yes, come on up. If you could give us your name and your address, please, sir, for the clerk.
My name is Glenn Neat, 32 Charles Street here in Paris.
Thank you.
I read through the agenda and I seen more involved as housing, affordable housing and whatever was the basis of these fourplexes. And I didn't hear anything mentioned in the presentation on that. Some of the areas we went over, the lady was very nice on the heights on building and the setbacks from property. Some areas in town, I think the Grand River Conservation and the planning have put restrictions on foundation heights have to be a lot higher, which does affect the peak of a house, the height compared to neighbors. I see the setbacks aren't that great, which means in some cases, the homes could be pretty imposing. Some like maybe along on Paris Road there, there's some townhousing there that's very imposing if you're standing beside it. So if these are going into low-density areas, that means they could possibly be very close to the existing neighbors that have been there for years. That is a concern of mine. And I would imagine all the drainage and everything else is going to be considered and not going to be affecting the low density that's already there. I'm not sure. I guess there's more to be talked about and questions to be asked on this subject. That's basically what this is just starting, I believe, so.
Yeah, and I've spoken to staff, and they're going to take these comments back for consideration.
Okay,
Yeah. Did you?
no questions?
No, I think that we'll take those under consideration, what you've said, and review. That was one of the questions we were determining, like the setbacks, for example, as to how they would work, and that's what we're looking for is feedback from the community, so.
I also noticed in the agenda that the government has funds for developing property that doesn't have services. Is that tied in also on this? For these fourplexes? I didn't hear that mentioned in the presentation here, but I did see it on the agenda when you went through at home.
For the mayor, to the delegate, we're not really looking at the services, so we're only allowing 4 units as of right in service settlement areas, so where they have existing municipal services to them, okay? Or areas that will have municipal services to them. So Paris and St. George only would be the areas that would be able to have 4 units as of right under this policy, yeah.
I sort of misunderstood because when I read the agenda for tonight, there was quite a detail on different subjects on that. So that's why I'm asking the questions. This is just regarding lots that are already serviced.
So through the mayor to the yes. So it's lots that have services there today or will have them in the coming future. So new subdivisions in Paris and St. George would also have the same rights in the future. Yeah. So anyone who has full municipal services will have that opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for the second time, is there anyone in the room that wants to speak to this application? Come on up. Again, if you want to give us your full name and your address, please, Mr. Wiley.
My name is Chris Wiley. I'm at 89 Ray Street. So just generally speaking, I just have some general curiosity towards this whole thing. You alluded to the idea that new lot fabric could be made. So if I'm going to put a fourplex in my backyard without new lot fabric, servicing to that new fourplex would come from my primary residence?
Yeah, excuse, you're going to have to come up to, there's a microphone there.
Yeah.
Where you can come back up to the podium so the people at home can hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, through mayor to the delegate. Technically, 4 units as of right means that up to 4 units is permitted per lot. So a fourplex cannot go on the rear lot of an existing primary dwelling. It needs to be
Okay.
severed and have a separate lot.
Okay, so but I guess where I'm going with that is the tax formula, however the county administers tax, would, of course, be affected by that. So if I'm creating new lot fabric, there would have to be a separate service for water, wastewater, so on and so forth, power, rather than coming off of an existing service from a primary residence. I'm familiar with some construction projects in my immediate neighborhood with shared services from a primary structure. And I can think of 2 right off the top of my head where it has become Unit A and Unit B sort of thing. But with new lot fabric, that would be a new municipal number altogether. Yeah, so then there would be a new tax roll, so on and so forth. And that's where we're going with this? Like when it's applicable and the application is successful, so on and so forth. There would have to be lot severance and new lot fabric registered with the registry office, so on and so forth. So, and then the construction end of this whole conversation, the minimums still exist. Like clearly, my backyard isn't going to be shadowed by a fourplex by my neighbor or something like that, you know, right up against the fence. Yeah, okay, and side yards, so on and so forth. And of course, there has to be access to a given road.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I guess that's it, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, and I'll ask for the third time. Is there anyone in the room that wants to speak to this application? Yep, come on up and state your name and your address, please, for the clerk.
Jennifer Walls, 14 Curtis Avenue South, Paris, Ontario. So I just want to be completely clear. So once a subdivision is made and we already know what it's going to be and it's then put in place, then you're saying then later we can add more housing and more people, more cars, more stuff to that area. Is that what we're...
Through the mayor to the delegate, yes. So in theory, yes, you could, and that's happening in existing subdivisions now, that if they have a single family, they're putting in a basement apartment, et cetera, they are permitted to do that legally, and that can continue. As Nagin mentioned, the uptake on that is very minimal in the new subdivisions because there's just not enough space to do maybe more than one unit, like a basement apartment. To C4, you would need a larger lot. So the numbers that were presented, basically, we looked at what are the larger lots in Paris and St. George where it might be possible to put 4 units in some form or fashion. Newer subdivisions, it's almost going to be impossible to get 4 if on a typical single-family lot because there's just not enough room on the property and enough parking space. So they still have to address parking and they still have to address a number of other factors. They're probably not going to C4 in any possibility because of the lot coverages, setbacks, and parking requirements. So they wouldn't change substantially, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on my third sweep of the room, is there anyone else that wants to come and speak to this application? Seeing none, we'll declare this public portion of the meeting closed. And now I'm asking for a mover and a seconder from council to get it on the floor for discussion. Councillor Oakley, Councillor McAlpine. Questions? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Nagin. Table 1 in your report shows that there might be as many as 4,000 extra units. To be clear, a little later in the story, you talk about parking. You said the parking requirements for both the main building and ARUs would limit the potential for adding 3rd or 4th units. You're assuming for all those lots on table 1 that you can put 3 extra units on. Is that correct? And is that true?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that is a maximum estimated potential uptake of the 4 units initiative, and it's based on some assumptions that, for example, a property has a lot coverage of 15%, it's zoned residential, but these numbers are just estimates and it excludes existing ARUs. And based on the parking requirements and other zoning standards that we have right now, it is not anticipated to see 3rd or 4th units to happen.
Sorry, just to be clear, so the 1,385 parcels of land you believe could accommodate a 4-plex or a house plus 3 ARUs?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, that's correct.
And that takes account of the planning, of the parking concerns that you talk about later in the story?
Through the mayor to the councilor, I'm not sure if that has been taken into consideration. So just to clarify, these numbers are based on the assumptions that the property is located in a residential zone. The existing building footprint covers less than 50% of the lot area, and the lot size is 350 square meters or greater. So it does not take into account other zoning requirements.
So my reading of this, when I got down to the parking story, basically told me that there won't be many applications for 4 units. So I'm a little leery of the thought of making this a change to our bylaw. And I know today's not the day to discuss that, but my thought was if there are so few that are falling into the category where you can get 4 units on a lot in Paris or St. George, maybe it would make more sense for us to keep the regulations as we have now and have them come to council for specific approval.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, just sort of picking off of this point here as a question. I believe when this initially came in front of us, part of the reason why it was coming forward at this point is now recognizing that currently we're in the federal election and who knows what the priorities of that government will be. But the previous federal government was indicating that there would be some sort of funding that would be tied to us having 4 units as of right, even if, practically speaking, there's very few units that come out of it. We would still then be opening up the opportunity to get federal funding. And given, I think, the general temperature of what I've seen all 4 major parties put out, I think that would be fair to say is probably a priority of the next government.
Any other questions? Councillor McAlpine.
This is just a question of clarity more so. So when you have the original unit, okay, you were requiring 2 spaces in the front of the property, and then for every additional unit that's added, you're requiring 1 space, is that correct?
Through the
Because,
mayor to the
The
council.
only reason I'm asking that is because then it says all other housing units, then you need 2 spaces per unit plus 0.35 spaces for visitor parking. So I wasn't sure if you were, say, having an older home, dividing it up into a 4-plex, then you would require 2 spaces per unit, or what the numbers would be in that case.
Through the mayor to the councilor. So if it's a detached, structure, it would be requiring 1 parking space. So the additional residential unit would need 1 parking space. But if it's attached to the principal dwelling, then it should meet the requirements of the zone. So if it's a triplex, it would need that 2 spaces plus a visitor parking.
Somebody, say, took their garage and turned it into an ARU, then they would only need 1 space in that case, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. But there wouldn't be any requirement for visitor parking in that case, is what you're saying?
Through the mayor to the councilor, I don't think so.
Just for clarification, no. The province's requirements, when they set in the ARUs, maximize that we could only ask for 1 parking space per ARU. So that's why the ARUs have a different calculation on parking versus if someone was splitting into a 4-plex or apartment units, that's where we have additional parking requirements in the zoning. That's where you see the 2. So there's a difference in the type of housing, which depends on what type of parking is required. But the 1 is only required because the province mandated it for ARUs. We can't exceed 1.
What's the difference between, say, turning your basement into an apartment versus a 4-plex, I guess?
Ultimately, it is not substantial if you really look at it. The difference is that when you have an ARU, there's a principal dwelling unit, which is the larger unit that is going to exist. So typically, if you have a house, and let's say it's 2,000 square feet, you're going to keep 1,500 square feet for the main unit and make another unit of 500 square feet. That's an ARU. You could have additional ARUs, but there's still a principal dwelling unit, which is the main unit. On a fourplex, they're generally the same size or equal-sized units, and there's no primary or principal unit. So, and in the fourplex, you're more likely to have them all in the principal building. They're all going to be in the principal building, obviously, then. So that's one unit one building split into four. An ARU would have, to get four, you'd have the principal unit with probably one or two in the principal unit, and then at least one or two detached. Yeah, it's just the way they're configured in the end.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was one of my questions. Why are we seeing this? What's driving it? Is it just because we want to be eligible for the infrastructure funding? Is there a need in the community? What's driving this right now?
So through the mayor to Councillor Miller, partially because we're trying to apply for infrastructure funding and we get some substantial monies to help assist us with some infrastructure works, and we have to have this in place in order to achieve that. Other elements, then you're going to hear from us later on in April about our housing needs. There is a need for us to achieve some different housing types and different opportunities in the community, and we're trying to find ways to achieve that. And the more we can achieve that in existing areas, unserviced areas, the better it is for all of us in terms of financial and tax resources, but also better use of existing urban areas. So there's a lot of benefits, more than just the financial, but we're trying to service some needs and give opportunities for people to provide some different housing types in our existing communities.
Nagin's presentation looks like a couple of the slides were cut and pasted from the city of Kitchener. I guess the city of Kitchener's probably doing this. You know, if I look at the city of Kitchener, they have more robust transit than we do. Do you think maybe is that something that should be looked at if we want to go higher density is transit? Because that wasn't talked. The only thing we talked about is parking.
Through the mayor again to Councilor Miller. I guess there's a chicken and egg theory here. You need density to make transit work, and if you want density, you should provide transit, and if you want to support some housing needs, you should have transit. So the two kind of do come hand in hand at some point. Do we need transit necessarily for 4 units as of right? No, because we're still requiring the parking and still requiring the rest of the parking on site. So you're still accommodating the needs of the community on the property, but you're missing out on a housing need or target that might be people who can't afford cars as much that would benefit from transit. That's just a segment of the community that's going to be hurt regardless, no matter what we do without public transit, which has nothing to do with 4 as of right.
Yeah.
This just helps people in existing properties maybe more maximize them or give them opportunity to provide some housing.
Yeah, I think when you're going for the density, we already acknowledged you need municipal services. And I'm just wondering about, again, more robust transit, like the city of Kitchener has. That'll come up for debate in May. Emergency services, that was a great question. Somebody's having, say, a medical emergency. I'm having a heart attack. I am in the 3rd residential unit at 15 King Street, whatever it is. How are we going to identify which unit they're in? What's the plan for that? Is there a plan? Do we know it, or is it going to be in the final report?
There is already a plan in place because we're already doing ARUs. So there is multiple housing numbers to properties. So we are working with that to make it better. But yeah, there is already a plan that we would number each unit accordingly on the property, and then on site they'd have some way to identify that, obviously like anywhere else, how to enter a unit. So
Okay, and then my last question is, it's called 4 units as a right, right? This is the right. You have a right for 4 units. To have that right, we're taking away rights from somebody else, and the somebody else would be the neighbors in this case. Because if somebody wanted to go to 4 units, the neighbors would not have a say in that. Is that correct? Is there any say at all, any place in the process at all that a neighbor or neighbors could have a say, given that it's taken out of the planning process?
So to Councillor Miller, if it's permitted and they meet all the zoning requirements, no, the neighbors have no right to that. Realizing that's why, A, we're not changing the requirements for the main dwelling unit. We're not reducing or making any reductions for the main dwelling unit. They have to meet the same standards as a regular house would. So somebody could build a regular house in the same footprint. The variation you're seeing mostly tonight is with the height and the setback is the ARU and the detached accessory building. So the height increase with a setback increase to go from 1.2 to the 3 meters. Is that some way to help compensate for that? But that'd be for an ARU then only that we're seeing a change. The biggest change you're going to see.
Okay, it's just, like I said, the name seems ironic. It's 4 units as a right, but those rights have to come from somebody else. So, okay, thank you.
Councillor House.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We can't hear you, Councillor.
Can't
Try
hear
it
me.
again.
All right, can you hear me?
No, third time's the charm. Oh. Councillor House, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you still. No. Councillor House, you want to try again?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Brandon can hear you, but he's online with you. We can't. Can we hear?
Can you hear me?
No.
I can hear Brandon.
Oh, funny. We'll chat.
Maybe.
System and it was working, but doesn't appear to be tonight.
Maybe, Councillor House, you can put it together in an email and send it to the clerk for us, and we'll make room for you on the next agenda.
Okay.
Don't know what else to suggest this late in the day. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it is a public information, so we can review it and talk about it at the next time we get together to talk about this. Councillor Bell.
Mr. Mayor, one final question. The table on your slide 5, Negin, what will be different if we pass the proposed bylaw? Is it just that there'll be a black dot on dwelling fourplex in R1 and R2? Or do you have black dots all the way down to group home in columns R1 and R2?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So we would just add fourplexes for R1, R2, RM1, and then remove the existing only condition for duplexes for R1 and R2 zones. That is the only change that is going to
So
happen.
unlike the picture on slide 2, which is the North Dumfries zoning bylaw, which has all kinds of different property types, we're only talking about the specific fourplex. We're not talking about potential for putting row houses on R1, R2 zoned areas.
Through to the Councillor Bell. 4 as of right is we're looking at all housing types that could be potentially allowed as 4 units. So it could be potentially like a 4-unit townhouse in some theory. Not that that would be practical and probably 99% chances, but we would be giving them apartments, duplexes, fourplexes, and obviously semis and singles would be permitted, and certain types of townhouses with up to 4 units would be permitted as of right. So the black dots would start to appear all over in various.
In R1 and R2 columns, it's black dots all the way down.
Yeah.
Till you get down to lodging house, which would not be done.
Yeah. Yes.
So in principle, you could put stacked townhouses on an R1, R2 site.
You could in theory if it worked, yes. Like I said, it's not as practical in many cases, but we're trying to maximize the opportunities for people for different types and opportunities to reach 4.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, it's on the floor. It has a seconder. Mr. Clerk, could you read it for me before we vote?
Through the mayor, the motion is, whereas on February 11th, 2025, council directed county staff to proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment to permit 4 units as of right in fully serviced areas of Paris and St. George. Therefore, that council receive ZBA 225NM preliminary zoning changes to permit 4 residential units as of right as information, and that county staff be directed to finalize zoning bylaw amendments attached to this report for placement on the future council meeting agenda for consideration.
Everyone's clear? Call the vote, Mr. Clerk.
All those in favor of this motion, please stand. And Councillor Howes, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to number 9 on the agenda, which is staff reports, and we don't have any communications. We don't have any. Resolutions, we have none. Other business? No, we don't have any. I didn't ask. Is there any other business? No. Okay, in camera, we're not going there. Bylaws, we have one bylaw. Councillor Chambers, you have that?
It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Garneau that the confirming bylaw be read a first time.
All those in favor of the first reading? Come on, up we go, up we go. Thank you. Councillor Chambers, the second reading, please.
And it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Garneau that the confirming bylaw be read a second time and the preambles and clauses be adopted.
Are there any questions to the second readings of the bylaw? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Chambers, you can do it for the third time, please, the bylaw.
And it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Garneau that the confirming bylaw be read a third time, be passed, be signed, and be executed.
All those in favor of the third reading of the bylaw? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 15 on the agenda is the next meeting and the adjournment, and we will meet at the call of the chair. Thank you.